The soup was getting cold again, but Iris didn't mind. She held the spoon steady as Mr. Chen's trembling hand reached for it, missing twice before she gently guided it to his lips. Outside the window of his cramped apartment, luxury cars hummed past on their way to somewhere important. Nobody slowed down. Nobody looked up at the third floor where an old man ate soup that wasn't getting any warmer. Iris had been coming to Mr. Chen's apartment for 11 months. Not because anyone paid her. Not because anyone asked. She came because on a February morning, she'd found him collapsed outside the corner store, his groceries scattered across the sidewalk like forgotten prayers. The ambulance came. The hospital released him. And then the silence swallowed him whole. She was a florist. Her hands always smelled like soil and stem water. Her shop barely kept itself alive, surviving on wedding orders and funeral arrangements, on the margins between celebration and grief. She was 32 and lived alone in a studio apartment where the radiator clanged like a prisoner begging for release. At night, she wondered if this was all there was. Work. Sleep. The empty chair across from her at dinner. But with Mr. Chun, something felt different. Purposeful. Every morning at 7, she brought him breakfast. Congee with century egg. Sometimes fried dough. She'd watch him eat, his hands shaking less when she was there. She read him the newspaper. Helped him to the bathroom. Combed his thin white hair. He didn't have much to say, his Mandarin thick and his English broken, but his eyes said everything. They said, "You are the only one who remembers I exist." She never asked about his family. The photos on the shelf told her enough. A young man in a graduation gown. The same man older, standing beside a sleek car. The same man, now in a suit, shaking hands with people who looked important. The frames were dusty. Nobody had touched them in years. What would you do if you discovered someone you love had been forgotten by everyone else? Drop your thoughts below. Across the city, in a glass tower that stretched into the clouds like a needle stitching earth to sky, Julian Chun sat in a boardroom that cost more than most people's homes. His shirt was Italian. His watch was Swiss. His patience was gone. The merger wasn't closing. The Japanese investors wanted reassurances he couldn't give. His assistant had quit that morning, the third one this year. And his phone kept buzzing with a number he didn't recognize. He declined it. Again. Julian was 36. He had built an empire from his grandfather's small shipping business, expanding it into logistics, tech, real estate. Forbes called him a prodigy. His competitors called him ruthless. His reflection called him tired. He hadn't seen his grandfather in 4 years. Maybe 5. There was always a reason. A meeting. A flight. A deal that couldn't wait. He sent money every month to the care facility. Generous amounts. He assumed that was enough. He assumed someone was handling it. He didn't know the care facility had closed 18 months ago. He didn't know his grandfather had been sent home. He didn't know that home meant alone. The phone buzzed again. Same number. This time, he answered. The voice on the other end was female. Calm but firm, like someone who had rehearsed this conversation in her head a dozen times before making the call. Is this Julian Chen? Who's asking? My name is Iris Wade. I've been taking care of your grandfather. The words landed strange. Taking care of. He frowned, glancing at his computer screen where 17 unread emails blinked for attention. I'm sorry, I think there's been a misunderstanding. My grandfather is in a care facility. Greenwood Estate. I handle the payments myself. Silence. Then quietly, Greenwood closed over a year ago. His hand stopped moving on the mouse. What? They sent him home. To his apartment on 10th Street. He's been there alone. Well, not alone. I've been coming every day. Julian stood up so fast his chair rolled backward and hit the window. That's impossible. I would have been notified. I'm his emergency contact, When was the last time you visited him, Mr. Chen? The question cut clean through. He opened his mouth. Closed it. The silence stretched long enough to become an answer. "I'd like you to come see him," Iris said. Her voice wasn't accusatory. Somehow, that made it worse. "Today, if possible. There are things we need to discuss about his care." "I'll send someone." "No." For the first time, her voice carried an edge. "You come. He's your grandfather. Not a task you delegate." The line went dead. Julian stood in his office, surrounded by glass and steel and the hum of controlled climate, and felt something he hadn't felt in years. Shame. It started in his chest and spread outward like cold water, filling all the spaces he thought success had sealed shut. He left the building without telling anyone. His driver navigated through traffic while Julian stared at his phone, scrolling through old messages, searching for the last time he'd contacted his grandfather. 2 years ago. A text. "Happy birthday." 3 words. No response. 10th Street looked like a place where time went to die slowly. The buildings were old, their facades cracked and weathered. Laundry hung from fire escapes. A dog barked somewhere unseen. Julian's shoes, polished leather that cost $800, felt obscene against the chipped pavement. He climbed 3 flights of stairs. The hallway smelled like cooking oil and old carpet. Apartment 3C. He knocked. The door opened, and there she was. Iris wasn't what he expected. She was younger, maybe 30, with dark hair pulled back in a simple braid. She wore jeans and a sweater with a small hole near the shoulder. No makeup. Tired eyes. But there was something in the way she stood in the doorway, protective, like a guard standing between him and something precious, that made him feel like an intruder. "Mr. Chun," she said. "Julian is fine." She stepped aside. "He's sleeping. But you should see where he lives. What his life looks like now." Julian walked inside, and his entire world shifted. The apartment was tiny. A kitchenette with a 2-burner stove. A bathroom he could see from the entrance. A living area that doubled as a bedroom, where his grandfather lay sleeping on a narrow bed, covered with blankets that looked hand-knitted. The photos Julian remembered from childhood visits, his grandmother, his father himself, sat on a shelf. He was shocked by how much dust had gathered on his own face. "He talks about you sometimes," Iris said quietly, standing beside him. "Mostly in Mandarin, so I don't understand all of it. But I hear your name. Julian. He says it like a prayer." His throat tightened. "Why didn't anyone tell me?" "I tried. I called the number listed as his emergency contact 6 months ago. It was disconnected. I called your company. They said you were unavailable and transferred me 4 times before hanging up." He had no response to that. The machinery of his own success had built walls so high even his grandfather couldn't climb them. "Why do you do this?" he asked, looking at her. "You're not family. You're not being paid." Iris walked to the small kitchen and put a kettle on the stove. "I was alone once. Really alone. The kind where you wonder if you disappeared, how long would it take for someone to notice? Your grandfather, he noticed me. When I found him that day, after the hospital, I visited once to make sure he was okay. He made me tea. Bad tea, but he made it himself, hands shaking, so proud to have a guest. And he asked about my day. Actually asked. Like my answer mattered." She turned to face Julian, and he saw tears she was refusing to let fall. "No one had asked me that in 2 years. So I came back the next day. And the next. Because mattering to someone, even someone the world has forgotten, that's not nothing. That's everything. Have you ever met someone whose kindness changed the way you see the world? Tell us about them below." Julian looked at his grandfather's sleeping face. The man who had taught him to count using abacus beads. Who had taken him to the docks to see the ships. Who had told him once that success meant nothing if you sailed alone. "I forgot him," Julian whispered. It wasn't a question. It was a confession. "Yes," Iris said. "But you're here now." His grandfather stirred, eyes fluttering open. Cloudy with age, but still sharp enough to recognize. "Julian." The word came out broken, disbelieving. Julian crossed the room and knelt beside the bed. His expensive suit crushed against the floor. His grandfather's hand reached out, trembling, and found his face. "You came," the old man whispered in Mandarin. "I'm sorry," Julian said, his voice cracking. "Grandpa, I'm so sorry." And then he felt Iris's hand, gentle on his shoulder, steadying him as everything he'd built threatened to collapse. Julian didn't leave that day. Or the next. He cancelled meetings. Ignored calls. His assistant, the new one, sent increasingly frantic emails that he deleted without reading. For the first time in a decade, the empire he'd built ran without him. And it kept running. That realization hurt more than he expected. He sat with his grandfather for hours. They didn't talk much. His grandfather's energy came in small waves, enough for a sentence or two before exhaustion pulled him back under. But Julian learned things. How his grandfather listened to the radio every morning, the Cantonese station. How he kept a journal he could no longer write in because his hands shook too much. How he'd saved every newspaper clipping about Julian's success, kept them in a shoebox under the bed like treasures. Iris came twice a day, morning and evening. She moved through the apartment like someone who knew every creak in the floor, every stubborn cabinet. She cooked. Simple things. Congee. Steamed fish. Vegetables in garlic sauce. The smells filled the small space and made it feel like a home instead of a waiting room. Julian watched her. The way she cut vegetables with practiced efficiency. The way she touched his grandfather's shoulder before speaking so she wouldn't startle him. The way she hummed while washing dishes, a melody he didn't recognize but found himself listening for. "You should eat," she said one evening, setting a bowl in front of him at the tiny table. "You've been here since morning." "I'm not hungry." "You're lying." She sat across from him with her own bowl. "Guilt ruins appetite. But you still need to eat." He picked up the chopsticks. The food was good. Better than the restaurants he frequented where meals cost $300 and tasted like ambition. "How did you learn to cook like this?" "My grandmother. Before she died." Iris's voice softened. "She raised me. When she passed, I didn't know how to fill the silence. So I cooked her recipes. It made me feel less alone." "Is that why you have no one?" The question came out wrong. Too blunt. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean." "It's okay." She set down her chopsticks. "I have people. Friends. Co-workers. But having people and being seen are different things. You can be surrounded and still invisible." She looked at him directly. "You know that feeling, don't you?" He did. God, he did. All those boardrooms full of people. All those galas and networking events. Everyone looking at him but no one seeing him. Just the brand. Just the billion-dollar reputation. "Why are you really here, Julian?" Iris asked quietly. "Not just today. But staying. Is it guilt or something else?" He thought about lying. He'd become good at that. But something about this apartment, this woman, his grandfather's shallow breathing in the next room, it stripped away his ability to hide. "I don't know," he admitted. "Maybe both. Maybe I'm trying to figure out who I am when no one's watching." "I'm watching," she said. Their eyes met across the table. And something shifted. The routine became natural. Julian started arriving earlier. Bringing groceries. Expensive ones at first, organic produce, imported goods, until Iris gently explained his grandfather didn't like fancy food. "He likes what he knows," she said. So Julian learned. Bok choy from the corner market. Rice from the Chinese grocery 3 blocks away. Soy sauce in glass bottles, not the plastic ones. They fell into a rhythm. Iris would cook. Julian would help his grandfather eat. They'd sit together in the small living room, the three of them, watching game shows his grandfather loved but couldn't quite follow anymore. During commercial breaks, Iris would tell stories about her day at the flower shop. Julian would listen, surprised by how much he looked forward to these mundane details. A bride who cried over the bouquet. A funeral arrangement that took 4 hours. the orchid in the window that finally bloomed. "You really love it," he said one afternoon. They were alone. His grandfather was napping. "The flowers. I love that they're temporary," Iris said. She was arranging fresh chrysanthemums in a jar, her hands moving with unconscious grace. "They bloom. They're beautiful. Then they're gone. It teaches you to appreciate the moment you're in." "That sounds lonely." "No." She looked up. "Lonely is permanent things that feel empty. A big house nobody lives in. A phone that never rings. Success that doesn't mean anything to anyone." She paused. "Lonely is what you were before you came here." The words hit him like a punch. Not cruel. Just true. "I've been thinking," Julian said slowly, "about moving him. Somewhere better. A real care facility with nurses and—" "He doesn't want that." Iris's voice was firm. "I asked him. He wants to stay here, where things are familiar. This place is falling apart. Then fix it without moving him. You have the money. Use it for something that matters. What's more important, providing expensive care or honoring what someone actually wants? Share your perspective." That night, Julian made calls. Not to investors or board members, but to contractors. Within a week, the apartment was transformed. New floors. Fixed plumbing. A walk-in shower with safety bars. A hospital-quality bed. Fresh paint on walls that hadn't seen color in decades. He hired a part-time nurse for overnight shifts. He set up accounts for groceries, utilities, anything his grandfather needed. But he didn't leave. Somehow, between the meetings he now took from the apartment and the evenings spent at that tiny table, this place had become more home than his penthouse ever was. And Iris. She'd become something he couldn't quite name. Not just the woman caring for his grandfather. Someone he wanted to know. Someone whose opinion mattered more than any business partner's. Someone who made him laugh when she teased him about his inability to chop vegetables properly. Someone who saw him, really saw him, and didn't look away. One evening, as she prepared to leave, he caught her hand. "Stay," he said. "For dinner. Please." She looked at their joined hands. Then at his face. "Okay," she whispered. They ate slowly that night. His grandfather had already dozed off, the nurse reading quietly in the corner. It was just them at the small table, the city lights flickering through the window like distant stars. "Can I ask you something?" Julian said, pushing rice around his bowl. "Why didn't you ever ask me for anything? Money. Help with your shop. You could have." Iris smiled, but it was sad. "Because that's not why I was here. The moment I asked for something, everything would change. You'd wonder about my motives. I'd wonder too. Some things need to stay pure." And now. She met his eyes. "Now you're not just the grandson who finally showed up. You're Julian, the man who learned to cook congee, who reads the Chinese newspaper to his grandfather even though your Mandarin is terrible, who sits in this tiny apartment like it's a palace because the person inside matters more than the address." His chest tightened. "You've given him months of your life. Years, maybe. I can never repay that. I don't want repayment." Her voice was gentle but firm. "I want you to understand what I learned. That the richest thing you can give someone isn't money. It's presence. It's showing up. Every single day. Even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard." Julian reached across the table and took her hand properly this time. "What if I want to keep showing up? Not just for him. For you too." Iris's breath caught. "Julian. I know this is complicated. I know I'm not good at this. At people. At anything that isn't a transaction. But you've made me want to be better. Not better at business. Better at being human." "You're already human," she said softly. "You just forgot for a while." He stood, pulling her up with him. They were close now, close enough that he could smell the jasmine in her hair, see the flecks of gold in her brown eyes. I don't want this to end when He couldn't finish the sentence. Then don't let it. She touched his face, her florist's hands gentle against his jaw. But you have to mean it. I won't be a phase. I won't be the feel-good story you tell at fundraisers. I need real. Real, he repeated. I can do real. When he kissed her, it felt like the first honest thing he'd done in years. Not a business deal. Not a strategy. Just two people who'd found each other in the wreckage of loneliness and built something worth keeping. From the bed, his grandfather's voice, rough with sleep and joy, about time. They broke apart, laughing. The old man was awake, eyes bright, smiling wider than Julian had seen in years. You approve, Grandpa? Julian asked. Approve? I've been waiting. Good woman doesn't wait forever. You almost lost her being stupid. Iris laughed, wiping her eyes. He's not wrong. Julian pulled her close. I'm not stupid anymore. Epilogue, 300 words. 6 months later, Iris's flower shop had a new sign. And a new location. Ground floor of a building Julian owned, rent-free, because as he told her, you saved something priceless. This is just business. She'd rolled her eyes but accepted. His grandfather lived another 2 years. Good years. Filled with family dinners in that renovated apartment, Julian and Iris taking turns cooking, the old man critiquing every dish with the authority of someone who'd earned the right. He walked Iris down the aisle at their wedding, his hand steady on her arm, his smile bright enough to power the city. When he finally passed, it was peaceful. Julian and Iris on either side of his bed, holding his hands, telling him stories until his breathing softened and stopped. The grief was real. But so was the gratitude. He brought us together, Iris said at the funeral, standing beside Julian as they watched them lower the casket. No, Julian corrected, pulling her close. You brought us together. You saw someone invisible and made him matter. You taught me what actually matters. She leaned into him. And what's that? Showing up. Being present. Loving people while they're here. He kissed her temple. You changed my life. We changed each other's. They walked back to the car together, hand in hand. In Iris's other hand, a single chrysanthemum from the funeral arrangement. Temporary. Beautiful. Worth cherishing while it lasted. Just like every moment. Just like love. If someone's kindness transformed your life, who would you thank? Drop their name below. And if this story touched you, share it with someone who needs to remember that it's never too late to show up for the people who matter.